How simple was it to trigger World War I? The answer is 7 shots. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife arrived in Sarajevo, the capital of the Bosnian province in the Balkans, for a visit. As his motorcade passed the Latin Bridge, Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian youth, rushed out from the crowd of onlookers, raised his gun and fired. After firing 7 consecutive shots, Ferdinand and his wife were critically wounded and died shortly after. Within a month of this assassination, the flames of war ignited across the European continent, eventually evolving into the First World War. So, the question arises, why did the assassination of a single Austro-Hungarian crown prince lead to Germany, Italy, the UK, France, Russia, and other powers entering the fray to participate in this war of the century? And in this war that swept through all of Europe, where both sides deployed over 70 million troops, with over 8.5 million soldiers killed, destroying the homes of 1.5 billion people, what massive conflicts of interest lay behind it? In this video, we will explain once and for all the true causes of the outbreak of World War I to thoroughly understand the causes and consequences of World War I. We must start with the geography of the Balkan Peninsula. The Balkans are located in southeastern Europe, bordered to the east by the Black Sea Straits. The Black Sea Straits consist of the Bosphorus, the Sea of Marmara, and the Dardanelles. From north to south, they connect the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, from east to west. They connect Europe and Asia. It is a vital channel for east-west trade, known as a maritime choke point, for the UK, France, Germany, Russia, and other European powers. To freely access the Black Sea Straits, one must first control or occupy the Balkan Peninsula. However, until the outbreak of World War I, this strategic location that the great powers coveted had been ruled by the Ottoman Empire for over 500 years. Starting in the late 18th century, the Ottoman Empire failed to keep up with Europe's military reforms and the Industrial Revolution, and its national power gradually declined. Russia, having long coveted the Black Sea Straits, seized the opportunity to declare war on the Ottoman Empire in 1877 and emerged victorious. However, hindered by the watchful eyes of powers like the UK, France, and Germany, Russia dared not directly occupy the Balkans. Instead, it forced the Ottoman Empire to agree to the independence of Serbia, Montenegro, Romania, Bulgaria, and others. Then, under the banner of pan-Slavism, Russia sought to control these nations to ensure unobstructed passage for its merchant ships and fleet through the straits. Nevertheless, Britain and Austria-Hungary expressed dissatisfaction. Consequently, European nations and the US held a conference in Berlin in 1878 to redefine the order in the Balkans. This conference determined that the Bosnia and Herzegovina region would be administered by Austria-Hungary. But Russia opposed this. In 1908, Austria-Hungary formally annexed Bosnia. This move incited strong opposition from Serbia, because Serbia was populated by South Slavs, and they viewed Bosnia as the core of national unification. Conflicts between Austria-Hungary and Serbia, as well as Russia, which supported Serbia, escalated rapidly. However, because Germany supported Austria-Hungary from behind the scenes, Serbia dared not rashly declare war on Austria-Hungary. Instead, with secret Russian assistance, in 1912, Serbia formed the Balkan League with Bulgaria, Greece, and Montenegro. They demanded that the Ottoman Empire grant autonomy to Macedonia and Thrace. After being refused, the Balkan League declared war on the Ottoman Empire and won. This was the First Balkan War. Serbia's territory expanded. Austria-Hungary could not tolerate this. So, together with Germany, they secretly incited Bulgaria to declare war on Serbia, Montenegro, Greece, Romania, and the Ottoman Empire, 5 nations in total, using uneven land distribution as an excuse. This was the Second Balkan War. The result was Bulgaria's defeat, forcing it to cede territory to the 5 nations for peace. Through the 2 Balkan Wars, Serbia's territory nearly doubled, becoming a major power in the Balkans, which further intensified the conflict with Austria-Hungary. The date of Archduke Ferdinand's visit to Sarajevo coincided with a day of national humiliation marking Serbia's historical defeat by the Turks. In the eyes of Serbian nationalists, this was a naked provocation. That is why he was assassinated. Although the assassin Princip was nominally a subject of Austria-Hungary, he was an ethnic Serb and a Yugoslav nationalist. With German support, Austria-Hungary publicly accused Serbia of participating in the Sarajevo incident and issued an ultimatum containing 10 harsh terms to Serbia, demanding full acceptance within 48 hours. So, why did Germany support Austria-Hungary? This was because sharp conflicts had long existed between Germany and the trio of France, Britain, and Russia, as early as the late 17th century, when France became the hegemon of the European continent, and Britain established a parliamentary constitutional monarchy after the Glorious Revolution. Germany was still fragmented and in a state of disarray. However, in Eastern Germany, Brandenburg, centered in Berlin, began to grow and strengthen, eventually forming the Kingdom of Prussia. In the early 18th century, it built the most powerful standing army within Germany. France obstructed this in many ways, because a powerful Kingdom of Prussia would inevitably pose a threat to France. Prussia and France finally engaged in a decisive battle in 1870. This war ended in a disastrous defeat for France, and became the founding war of Germany. France not only paid Germany a massive war indemnity of 5 billion francs, but also ceded the Alsace and Lorraine regions to Germany. From then on, Germany and France were sworn enemies. Furthermore, Germany and Russia frequently had trade frictions to protect their domestic markets. And because Russia's meddling in Balkan affairs by supporting Serbia threatened Germany's interests in Eastern Europe, Germany also viewed Russia as a strategic rival. In 1879, Germany and Austria-Hungary signed an alliance treaty aimed against Russia. The reason Germany chose Austria-Hungary as an ally was to secure its trade and strategic interests via the railways and transport networks within that country connecting to the Middle East and Near East. At the same time, once war came, Austria-Hungary's territory could provide Germany with sufficient strategic depth, thereby alleviating pressure on the German homeland. Italy, having failed in its struggle with France over Tunisia, was also wooed by Germany to become an ally. Thus, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary signed an alliance treaty in 1882, formally establishing the Triple Alliance system. Germany, utilizing French war reparations, rose rapidly during the Second Industrial Revolution, growing increasingly powerful and becoming the core of the Triple Alliance. As a result, the existing balance of power in Europe was broken, and conflicts arose between Britain and Germany. Germany vigorously developed its navy, engaging in an arms race with Britain and challenging British maritime supremacy. After its rise, Germany demanded a redistribution of overseas colonies to acquire more markets for selling industrial products. This came into direct conflict with Britain's global interests. Germany's construction of the Baghdad Railway threatened British hegemony in the Middle East. German expansion in Africa threatened British interests in Egypt and South Africa. Germany's lease of Qingdao in the Shandong Peninsula threatened Britain's sphere of influence in China. Facing the aggressive posture of the Triple Alliance led by Germany, the UK, France, and Russia constantly adjusted their diplomatic relations and gradually came together. Russia needed funds to build railways, and France provided loans. It was a perfect match. The two countries reached a Franco-Russian military agreement in 1892. Facing their common adversary, Germany, relations between Britain and both France and Russia also thawed. The Entente Cordiale was signed in 1904, and the Anglo-Russian Convention was signed in 1907. With this, the Triple Entente was formally established, and Europe's two opposing military blocs were finally formed. The member nations of these two blocs all had their own interests and spheres of influence in the Balkans. They used various means to secretly support different ethnicities and nations on the peninsula, cultivating their own proxies, thereby exacerbating conflicts on the peninsula and expanding their own influence. So, when Austria-Hungary issued the ultimatum to Serbia, their backers, Germany and Russia, quickly stepped onto the stage. Russia required Austria-Hungary to make appropriate concessions, while Germany declared full support for Austria-Hungary. Because of this, even though Serbia accepted all demands except for two key clauses, an emboldened Austria-Hungary still decided to go to war, and on July 28, 1914, bombarded the Serbian capital, Belgrade. Thus, the curtain rose on the First World War. However, at the start of the war, the reaction was not fiercest or swiftest from Austria-Hungary, but from Germany. On July 30, 1914, Germany began mobilization for war, and on August 1st and 3rd, declared war on Russia and France respectively, in order to avoid a two-front war against France and Russia while declaring war simultaneously. Germany meticulously devised the Schlieffen Plan. The intent was to first launch a massive offensive on the Western Front, quickly crushing France with a blitzkrieg, then turning east to resist the Russian army. But since Germany borders three countries, Switzerland, France, and Belgium, Germany theoretically had only two march routes to attack France. One was a direct attack through the Ardennes Mountains on the Franco-German border and Alsace. But the Ardennes terrain was rugged, and France had amassed heavy troops on the Alsace front. This meant that if Germany took this route, it would inevitably be stalled, unable to achieve the goal of a blitzkrieg. The other route was to pass through Belgian territory. This route had flat terrain and no heavy interception. Plus it had railway hubs. It was the only route that could achieve the objective. The problem was that Belgium was a neutral country, so it refused passage. After issuing an ultimatum to no avail, Germany declared war on Belgium on August 5. However, Germany never imagined that it would suffer heavy losses in Belgium,